Welcome. Today we're talking about motivating and engaging students in online learning. I am Matt Yauk, the Academic Tech Director for the College of Education and Human Ecology at The Ohio State University.
Hi, I'm Eric Anderman. I'm a professor of educational psychology at Ohio State.
Hi, my name is Quishay. I'm a professor of learning technology, and then I study students' engagement in online learning.
Hi, I'm T. Street. I'm the Director of Health Sciences Academies and Outreach in the College of Education and Human Ecology at OSU.
So engagement in the educational process is a major predictor of meaningful learning, student success, retention, and dropout rates, and overall satisfaction. Sometimes it's viewed in the research as the glue between home, school, peers, and community. So starting us off, how can teachers get their students to tune in the first place? And what can teachers do to maintain students' interest so that they continue to be engaged?
That's a great question, and people who are teachers and people who are researchers have been wrestling with this for years, even in regular classrooms. And in online learning, it's becoming more and more of an issue. I hear so many stories about students who tune in and then tune out. The sort of secret sauce to making this work is you have to do two things. One thing is you have to make it interesting to the kids, and another is you have to make it useful in their minds. And that is something that most people hear that and say, well, that's obvious, but it's got to be interesting to the student personally. So they've got to be able to personally relate to it. And we, as teachers, it's hard work to do that, but we have to now more than ever go out of our way to show kids why things might be particularly useful to them, and we have to make things interesting to them. And there's lots of ways. I always say, use the technology to your advantage. Use the fact that you can use so many different forms of media to show people why things are useful. Useful, when I say useful, I mean both useful in the moment and useful for the future. When kids believe that what they're learning is useful, that's one of the, if not the strongest predictor of actually what they end up doing for their careers. So if they think it's useful, they'll keep tuning in. And if they find it interesting, they'll keep engaging.
What are some of the unique things that teachers need to be aware of with regard to student engagement when teaching online?
That's a very important question, especially during this special time. Globally, we are in the pandemic. Locally, and the students are now in remote learning, and then they're isolated in their homes. So we should not treat student learning and teaching the same way as before. It's a new setting. It's a new type of learning that we are talking about. Therefore, specifically related to engagement, I want to talk about 2 points. One is the importance of relationship. We know relationships has been very important in school settings, and then that's how students get engaged in a variety of activities. But in online learning, now students are isolated. Then how do we create methods or ways to connect them and help them to build relationships? They no longer can do hugs and high fives or fist bumps in a online setting. And then so how do we build relationships? So that's one key, and then it's important. So we have to leverage a variety of technology to help them to get connected. In emails, instant messages, social media are great ways to get kids connected. Zooms that we are using right now, it's also a way to build relationship. But importantly, in online, there's also a different types of concerns that we have to raise in building relationships, because students do or say things differently than they would do or say in face-to-face settings. So in online, they have a different, what we call netiquette. The online matters. So we have to be aware of what students are saying, what students are posting, what students are how they are building relationship with each other, and then maybe as a teacher, trying to foster this positive culture and then reduce the conflicts that might caused by the new things that they do or say in online setting that's different from face-to-face. So that's about relationship. And then some ways that we can do to help them to build relationships, again, be mindful their relationship building process is different from face-to-face now. They're moving online. Everybody is isolated in their homes. They have to communicate through computer mediated ways. So the teachers really needs to know the situation is different, and then maybe leverage some of the techniques or technologies to channel them to build positive culture in the community.
I was just going to add that you hinted at this, but I think that using the breakout rooms that are available online is a great way to get kids to keep them engaged and to get them to be doing things socially with each other. So it kind of will satisfy both of those needs at the same time.
When I think about how we can help students to better self-regulate, I think that there's a lot of factors in the research that show that persistence can be built. Those things including like study habits, educational goals for like the course or for their career, stress, self-confidence, and motivation. So I think those factors alone should be used in every classroom, and teachers should be aware of all of those things. Similar to how reading across the curriculum became a success in that, it's not just the English teachers, not just the reading teachers that are teaching literacy, but it's actually everyone's job to do that. I think the same is true for motivating students and to keep them feeling stress-free and build their self-confidence and instill positive study habits.
That's a really good point. So especially in the remote learning, students are now in a different context, and then the external sort of support, such as teacher support, and then school typically have a schedules that supports students' time management. Those type of supports might not readily available for remote in remote setting. Therefore, we really needs to highlight students' self-regulation skills. What is self-regulation? It's students' ability to set goals, to plan things, and then to monitor their engagement, and then to adjust their goals and plans accordingly. So it's a process they manage their own learning. So in this remote settings, then especially in terms of engagement, we really need to help to support our kids to be able to self-manage or self-regulate their learning process. There are some tips. For example, we might want to help students to set up daily goals or daily structures so they can have a plan. And then we also need to prompt them to periodically monitor those plans to see if it works, and then also give them some guidance of maybe adjust their plans accordingly. This is especially important because a lot of remote learning or online learning are self-paced, and then that heavily rely on students' self-management. Therefore, we really need to think about how we can leverage students' self-regulation, planning, monitoring, and an adjustment to adapt to online learning.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Clay. And I was just going to add to that I think that there's an assumption often that kids, particularly older kids, know how to self-regulate, know how to do these things, and that's they often don't, even when we're doing in-class learning. And so we need to really go out of our way to constantly help the students to self-regulate, help them to set reasonable goals, help them to organize their time. And I think one of the things, again, trying to take advantage of the technology is saying that there's so much downtime when kids are not in full class. So I think a lot of us as teachers can use that, and I'm using it even in my college class, to check in with people individually and to help kids individually stay on track. I think that's a really good way to get kids to be engaged during all that downtime when they are supposed to be working independently, and often need some help to do that.
And for younger kids like my kids, they might not have the needed self-regulation skills yet because they're still developing those skills. So the teachers, maybe what you can do is really be more specific on the steps, help them to set up the schedule. And also importantly, work with families and parents to give that sort of support to especially the younger kids.
All excellent, excellent points. So transitioning a little bit, much of the curriculum that teachers are provided is highly scripted and often doesn't really allow for students to interact with each other or with the teacher. So how can teachers engage with students given these types of curricula?
That's a really great question. I think that in this time, teachers are going to have to go to really even more lengths than they do to have authentic, relational kinds of conversations with kids. And one of the things I've been encouraging teachers is to not feel so pressed, particularly in the beginning, to get into the academics. Spend some time getting to know your kids, because what we know and what the research tells us is when kids think that you care about them, they're more apt to want to learn from you. I also think because kids are craving human connection and they're craving the opportunities to be with teachers, but also with each other, finding ways in the classroom for teachers to build those relationships early on, I think will serve the purpose of making sure that the interactions are authentic and not as scripted. But I also think it will be the things that make kids want to come. One of the motivators that will bring them in every day when they know that something exciting is going to happen. So for example, in the beginning, spending some time in the first couple of weeks of school, because it's going to have to be much more intentional than it is sometimes in the classroom, because you don't have the ability to see, feel, and touch those students and to touch their desks to get them to see that you care. So finding activities that do that. For example, one of the activities that I'm sharing with teachers is in the beginning, doing some things to see their humanity, but also to see yours, giving them the example of you hit the lottery, you have $100,000, how you're going to spend it, and you only have a week. And so in addition to that being fun and kids being able to share and being encouraged to engage early, it also gives them the opportunity to share with teachers, if teachers are listening, what these children value. And so because you now know what they value, you know how to engage them. If they value their parent and their parent above everything else, I'm going to do this for my mom, I'm going to buy her this. When you're struggling with the student, you know that one of the places where you can engage to get the students back on track is by engaging their parent, because you know that's something that child values. So finding ways, but also sharing a part of who you are. I always tell teachers, if you ask kids to share their lives, be willing to share parts of your life as well. Not the parts that we would never share, but the parts that we're asking kids. So tell kids how you would spend your $1 million or your $100,000. I'm doing some of those genuine activities that build both community within those classrooms, but also build trust between the teacher and students. And it also builds an opportunity for kids to really get to know each other on levels that are not so superficial, that we don't generally have time to do sometimes in classrooms when everything is so scripted.
And I wanted to just add that's excellent, and that ties in with what I was talking about earlier. When teachers can take the time at the beginning of the year to really develop these one-on-one relationships, it's much easier to then try to figure out how to make the content interesting and relevant to individual students. Because if I know what an individual student's interested in, I can make that connection. So taking the time to do that can make all the difference with a student who's trying to decide whether to tune in or tune out, knowing that the teacher has really found a way to tie what we're learning about to something that I'm genuinely interested in.
And also when we know that, for example, when you were talking earlier, Eric, about kids going into breakout spaces, kids are going to love that opportunity. One, it gives them an opportunity, they think, to not have the teacher in their business, but give them something specific to do in that time, and then give them a time frame. For example, one of the activities with them getting to know each other, because we always assume that because kids share classrooms that they all know each other. When you do the breakouts, an activity that you could do is giving them the task of finding 3 things that everyone in that breakout room has in common. And then one thing that makes each one of them unique. So it allows them to do that. And then they come back and they group share. Our room found that we have these 3 things in common. Beyond the obvious of we're in the same grade or in the same class, what are some of those other things? But it allows them to go out, it allows them to come back in, but it also helps the students to see that the teachers are kind of cool. They're learning technology. It takes them out of their comfort zones, and teachers are then able to share with students, these are things that I'm learning so that I can make the environment more interesting for you as well. But really creating opportunities and ideas for kids to engage, like, background contests, so that every day the students come up with new backgrounds and have it relate to whatever they're studying. So if you're studying history, they might have a sepia tone of their family in the background and talking about their family history and tying it. But really being creative, as you all said earlier, in using the technology and the places where our young people gather to really engage them in ways that teachers haven't necessarily thought about or had to do in the past. You've had to rely on some old standards. This is an opportunity for everyone to stretch and grow, students and teachers. But I think when you come at it from an authentic place and not so scripted, I think that more and more kids will want to tune in, and they'll come on more frequently, and they'll try to be engaged because they ultimately want to please you, particularly if you help them to see that they matter to you.
I am envisioning a environment that is not sterile in the least. I'm picturing this sort of learning management system that's just rich with personality, and I want to be a part of that even. So thank you for that. What are some strategies that parents and students can use to help support the students in their home environment? Because I know that's going to be challenging for a lot of families this year.
There are so many, and one thing I wanted to recommend is we're lucky to have the Ohio Family Engagement Center here at the university, and they have lots of information and strategies, and it's not researchy. It's all written for people who are not in a research world, but it's all research based, and they have a wonderful website that has links to many, many, many resources that I think people will find really helpful.
One thing that I would add, and this is more for the teachers to help the parents, is to use the technology that is available. Use the learning management system specifically. Add your syllabus, add due dates for assignments. Use that for the grade book, and invite parents to join as parents so that they can observe, get announcements, get updates, and actually track the progress so that you don't have to be the one to always send out information, or that you don't have to rely on the students also. That's not beneficial just for the parents, but that's actually really helpful for the students as well in keeping track of what they should be doing, keeping them organized, and it would help you to be able to provide these media-rich lessons that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
I would also encourage parents to reach out to their school districts to see what other supports are in place. Some of the larger school districts are going to have the opportunity when kids are struggling to have their students visit what are being called learning extension centers that are going to be hosted in community centers, in faith-based organizations, where kids can come and get extra help, get some of the resources that they need, socially distanced, of course, and quite a few of the larger school districts, including Columbus, will be able to avail themselves of that. So I really think we should encourage them to ask their school districts what other support resources will exist for their particular school district.
In closing, know that you are not alone this year. A lot of people are going through the same things as you and are asking a lot of the same questions as you. And there's a lot of stuff that we could have talked about in this short video, but we just didn't have the time. There's so much research. There's so many resources. There's so many strategies that are out there for you. And what we're going to offer is a place where you can discover some of those things. And if you visit the website, you can check out a brief summary of this video and of the topic in general. You can see some of the related research, and you can see some of those resources and strategies, specific, tangible things that you can use in your classroom. Thanks.